football star.
And that was Brian Price.
A loving father. So what triggered his change from this
Nope, you stay out here.
to this? The story behind this shocking video, only on 4 tonight.
Iraqi nationals facing deportation are one step closer to having their day in court thanks to a federal judge here in Detroit.
Looking live at the U.S. Capitol, where a big vote on health care will take place tomorrow, and we have just learned Senator John McCain is expected to be there.
Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News at 11 starts now.
We begin tonight with a story of Brian Price, the college star, elite NFL athlete, and loving husband and father.
Who ended up in this video, out of control, making no sense, at a Washtenaw County auto parts store. His family would tell you it's a miracle he didn't end up dead.
And tonight, the cause of what you see in that video is not what you'd expect, and it's something doctors and police never saw coming. Mara McDonald is live tonight with Brian's story. Mara?
Kimberly, when I first approached Brian Price and his wife Candace about talking to us, they were very apprehensive. But Brian relented and he said, okay, I want to meet you and I want to look in your eye and I want to see what you're made of. And then he put this out and said, I want you to know I'm not going to hurt you. Take a look at the video and you'll understand the context.
And he's in trouble right now, and down he goes. And that was Brian Price.
Brian Price overcame a South Central LA childhood straight out of a Tupac Shakur song.
I grew up with nothing, but my mom made us seem like we had everything.
2 brothers murdered and a sister killed in a car wreck, a dysfunctional family unit. But he would excel in football, first at his high school and then at UCLA.
This has been a very difficult decision to make. However, after talking with my coaches and my family, I decided to forego my senior season at UCLA.
Price was a star.
Number 92, Price.
A defensive tackle picked up in the second round of the 2010 NFL draft for Tampa Bay. But hideous pelvic injuries would eventually sideline him in Tampa, as well as playing for the Cowboys and Chicago Bears.
Come to find out, like, my bones had split apart, like it cracked, my bones broke.
He's married to track and field national gold medalist and Ann Arbor native Candace Davis. They met at an exclusive party in LA. Brian brought his mom and some other family members and saw Candace walk in. His heart stopped.
She walked through the door and I leaned to my mom and I was like, I'm gonna marry her. That's my wife right there.
He was just bashful and he was so polite, and I was like, why is he acting so nice? I was like, what's wrong with him?
He bought up every bottle of pineapple juice at that party so nobody else could buy Candace a drink, and he made good on his declaration. He and Candace got married in Detroit in 2012. Their daughter Gianna is the light of their life. Candace is now pregnant with their second child, a son. So how did this man turn in to this man?
What's your name? I'm Dave. Who are you?
This is Brian at an auto parts store in Ypsilanti in April. It's his birthday. Candace has arranged for him to get a massage at a local spa. He never made it. Instead, he stopped at the auto parts store. The police have been called because a disoriented, aggressive Brian is inside, making no sense and toppling displays. Washtenaw County Sheriff's deputies are trying to calm him down. He's clearly agitated. And then Brian takes a full-on dive through the heavy-duty glass doors. Think about that impact for a minute. And then, as only a former NFL defensive tackle could, he actually gets back up.
They're like, are you Mrs. Price? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, we have your husband in the emergency room.
Get out here, sit down on the ground.
And when I got there and the officers described the incident to me, I was just shocked. I mean, and I couldn't believe the things they were describing.
Mentally, like, some days I struggle a lot. But, like, as a man and as a friend and a father, you don't want people to see it. But at the same time, like, I know I'm not the only one going through this.
So the immediate assumption when Brian got to the hospital was that he had to be drugged out of his mind. That's what the police thought. That's what the doctors thought. So Candace goes to the hospital. And in this report, it details how she told them that's not the case, that her husband likely suffers from something else entirely. It's called CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Essentially, repetitive concussions from years in football. And coming up tomorrow night at 11, we've got part 2 with Brian and Candace, talking about why we can only say it is a likely diagnosis, not an absolute certainty of a diagnosis, and how this manifests. And if you're the parent of a kid that plays contact sports, you ought to watch it and take a hard look.
Because we're looking at the long-term effects that ultimately are the result of concussions.
This man's 28 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. What does he say about that day? Does he remember what happened?
He doesn't remember any of it. He doesn't remember the freak out in the store. The only thing he remembers, he told me, was waking up and tasting blood in his mouth.
But it's so chilling. Even when he said he was going to schedule that interview with you, he wanted to tell you he wasn't going to hurt you. So he's probably fearful this could happen again.
Okay.
Wow. All right.
We look forward to your report tomorrow. Mara, thank you.
Mara.
Thanks, guys.
Well, now to a developing story on the deportation battle involving more than 1,400 Iraqis in the United States.
A federal judge in Detroit has indefinitely stopped their deportations, buying them time to persuade immigration courts to change their minds.
Priya Mann following the new developments for us tonight. And Priya, you were there when a local detainee got the news.
Yeah, we were with a Metro Detroit woman as she called her husband to tell her about the preliminary injunction filed by a federal judge here in Detroit. And this preliminary injunction paves the way for Iraqi nationals to reopen their immigration cases.
You got the injunction, you got a postponement, 90 days.
Well, we got to thank the Lord for that. It's a blessing.
Chantel Hanna broke the news to her husband Maher, who was detained in Youngstown.
We had tears in our eyes. We had tears in our eyes. And we are really a maximum security prison right now.
Speaking from the detention facility, Maher praised U.S. District Judge Mark Goldsmith for granting the preliminary injunction.
I really feel it in my heart that it's going to turn on our way.
In his ruling, Judge Goldsmith wrote, each petitioner faces the risk of torture or death on the basis of residence in America and publicized criminal records. Many will also face persecution as a result of a particular religious affiliation. In June, Maher, along with 1,400 other Iraqi nationals, were detained in ICE raids across the country. The preliminary injunction gives them 3 months to reopen their immigration cases.
It was either a denial or grant. So we got a grant, so I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like this is all happening in the right directions. We're moving towards the right directions, and I'm grateful.
Angelina Barish says her family is hopeful their dad, Moyad, will be back home soon.
I don't want to be like the last person to see my dad like behind a glass window. I wish he can come home until like all this is over with. I feel like none of them deserves to be in there. And the judge gave a number of reasons for filing this preliminary injunction, including feeling that by moving detainees out of state, that made it very difficult for them to reopen their cases. He also pointed out that many have had limited phone access, making it very difficult to talk to lawyers. Families tell me the next 90 days will be very busy indeed. Reporting live from federal court, I'm Priya Mann, Local 4.
ICE tells us they'll have a statement tomorrow morning, Priya, but in the meantime, where do we go from here?
You know, I did speak with the ACLU. They expect the federal government will file an appeal, meaning this will go to circuit court and be heard in Ohio. But which judges would hear that case, that remains to be seen.
All right, Priya Mann, thanks very much for that report.
Senator John McCain will be there tomorrow when the Senate votes on the future of the Affordable Care Act. Senate leaders say they will vote to start debate on the health care overhaul. What's not clear, though, is whether they'll eventually vote to repeal Obamacare and replace it later, or vote to repeal and replace it at the same time. The last vote was delayed after Senator McCain had surgery to remove a blood clot, which turned out to be a cancerous brain tumor.
A Rochester man is charged after his gun accidentally went off, injuring 2 women next door. Police say Jacques Halliburton dropped his gun while cleaning it in his apartment. Earlier this month, it went off. The bullet traveled through the wall into the apartment next door, hitting 1 woman in the leg and another in the arm. They've both been treated and released. Halliburton is charged with careless discharge of a firearm.
Since the news at 6 o'clock, the owner of the Greektown bar where a woman claims she was bitten by a bouncer is telling his side of the story. Alicia Francavilla says that she was celebrating her birthday with friends at Exodus, and just before closing, they stopped to use the bathroom. She claims the owner and several bouncers told them they couldn't go in the restroom and had to leave. Words were exchanged, and when a friend started recording with her cell phone, Francavilla says staff got violent.
He looked at my face, he spit in my face, and then he bit my hand. And as I was going down the stairwell, he started singing Happy Birthday.
Exodus released a statement saying in part that Francavilla and her friends tried to re-enter the bar after closing. The owner says they apologize for the experience. They've investigated and taken immediate action with the staff. Well, no surprise seeing somebody cry at a wedding, but this was a really touching moment. What moved this little boy to tears?
Relentless and on the run, the man leads police on a chase and refuses to give up despite several attempts to stop him by police. How they finally stopped him. Ben.
Karen, we will make up for that lack of sunshine today once we get into Tuesday, even though it will be a cool start in the 50s. Pretty nice forecast in the 7-day outlook, all coming up.
Okay, Ben, and a big blow to efforts to keep taxpayer money from being used to make changes to Little Caesars Arena for the Detroit Pistons. The judge's ruling and what it means going forward.
Coming up tomorrow on Local 4 News Today, all the overnight breaking stories that you need to get your day started off informed.
Plus, chicken with an attitude, the new spot that's taking a Motor City spin on traditional favorites. It's Tasty Tuesday at 6 a.m.
Oh, does that look good? Plus, weather and traffic always on the 4s. Detroit mornings start here from 4:30 to 7 a.m. See you tomorrow morning.
Tonight, a judge dismissed parts of a lawsuit challenging public funding for the Pistons to move to Little Caesars Arena. It's a big blow to challengers. A federal judge ruled the 16-count lawsuit lacked standing. Opponents sued to force a public vote on whether $34.5 million in public funding should finance alterations to the arena to make room for the Pistons to move there.
A lawsuit against former MSU star Draymond Green will be formally announced tomorrow. Green is accused of assault and battery. The lawsuit, which will be filed in California.